How's it going, guys? I'm Jeremy, and today I'll tell you about my trip in Xinjiang, China. This was a bike trip I did for about a week because it's not super far to go from Pakistan into China to Kyrgyzstan in that far western part. But an interesting trip. You basically feel like you're in the Middle East, even though you're in China, and you'll still have the same annoying problems with police in hotels that I've had over the years many times. One of the reasons I left China last year was because of the hotel and police issues, such a hassle. So anyway, here's the story of my trip through Xinjiang, and then I also did a side trip to Xi'an and Kunming. So I just finished going through Pakistan. I went through the border, which was a little bit more of a hassle than other borders. They definitely checked all the bags and things like that. And I stayed in the first border town and got like a dorm room. And there was actually a couple Japanese staying there too. And that was interesting because it kind of, after living in China for a year and a half, and I hadn't traveled to Japan yet at that point, but they knew obscure kind of things from the States. Like, for instance, we were talking about Fish, the band, which, you know, not even probably a lot of people in the States know Fish. So it's kind of cool that they knew of some kind of obscure things where, you know, when I was in China, people wouldn't know anything about, you know, Fish. They'd hear like, you know, Taylor Swift and pop music and stuff like that, but nothing obscure. The next day I went over almost to Kyrgyzstan Lake, and you go up towards a pass, and that was the coldest I'd been in a few months, like basically since I'd been in Tibet like the year before or something, so it was quite cold up there. And before I got to the lake, a lady offered a room for like, I don't know, 100 renminbi, like $18 or something, and I got her down to like 50 renminbi. And they were cool. They cooked for me, and I hung out there and had some drinks, and she made like the local noodles and stuff like that, which was really nice. The next day I passed by the lake, which I guess from where I was at, you don't have that amazing of a view from there, but it's still really pretty. And by the end of the day, I wanted to stay in a town, and it didn't look like there was any rooms. And I asked some people, and they weren't sure, and eventually I went to the police station, which was a mistake. Because as I mentioned in this last video, when I was in Pakistan, I stayed with the police several times. And even in India or other countries in general, police in general are actually pretty helpful. Like, I mean, they're concerned about your safety, right? So a lot of times they'll just give you a place to stay or bring you to a hotel, no big issue. But not in China, especially in Western China, where obviously they have sensitive things with the Uyghur people, which are the local people there, and of course the Tibetans in Western China. So the guy, you know, it took forever for a guy to come, for like the main police guy, and yeah, he was a total asshole, and he's like, you can't stay in this town, and you have to take a taxi to Kashgar, like the main city basically I was going to. And I was like, at that point in my travels, and in general, like on principle, like I'm supposed to bike the whole trip if I can, you know? Like I had to take a shuttle to the Chinese border in Pakistan, but that's because I couldn't bike, you know, I'm not allowed to. And so that was really annoying. And of course, they didn't offer me a place to stay or anything like that. Even though they had a huge building and rooms, you know, it would have been easy just for me to crash there and take off the next day, but never that easy. And so I kept going down the road as it was dark, basically. And I figured, you know, you just come upon a big field because, you know, earlier in that day and stuff, there's still a lot of open areas. But the problem here is that on the road to Kashgar, you've got walls on both sides of the road, like in front of all the people's residence. It's closed, you know, for protection or to keep animals in, whatever. And so you don't really have any area just to go off and camp easily, except for like the ditch in between the road and that wall. And so it was dark, and I'm like, I saw a gas station, and next to the gas station there was a big, you know, empty room basically. And I was like, you know, I asked the guy, can I just crash out here, throw down my mat, and I'll be gone, you know, first thing in the morning. And yeah, it wasn't like, I don't know, 20 minutes or whatever, the cops came, the same cops, and they're like, you have to leave now. And that guy had called them. And it was ironic too, because he was a Uyghur guy. He didn't look much different than me. So I was like, come on, dude, we're not on the same side, but like, we're the other, you know? And yeah, he seemed happy about it, that like he told on me. And I wouldn't want any Uyghur people or anyone in general to be in one of those concentration camps. But if that guy's there right now, I wouldn't mind. Friggin' bastard. So anyway, I basically continued out. I was like, okay, well, I'm not taking a cab. Or like, I'm going to bike in the dark, which of course is the most dangerous thing. And yeah, I basically just ended up next to that wall in the road that was probably only, I don't know, 20 feet, whatever. And luckily when I woke up the next day and checked, I was pretty concealed with the trees and stuff, so no one came over and bothered me or anything like that. And then I made it into Kashgar, which is a pretty cool city. Where the local people live is actually just a small district. 90% of the people there are Han Chinese, which has been, the government's given them incentive or money or different things to move into Tibetan areas and Uyghur areas in West China, because those areas are different and they want them to kind of make those people the minority, which is obviously a big issue with not just Tibet and Xinjiang, but everywhere in the world. I mean, people don't like each other very much, unfortunately, and if you're a different race or religion, it just never goes well. Not too long after that, actually, in Tibet, in that area, they had big protests and stuff like that. And then there's been huge crackdowns in the last 10 years, as most people know. And so I checked out, the old city and stuff. It was neat. You feel like you're kind of in the Middle East in that area. And then if you're outside the other part of town, it's like, the Mao statue and very Chinese. And then I met some travelers in Pakistan, like a Japanese woman and a couple other guys. And we ended up going to Urumqi for a couple days. Which is also decent. That's a bigger city, more Han Chinese kind of, a little further in the east. And then we went to Xi'an, which Xi'an has the terracotta warriors, which is pretty cool. It's definitely interesting, but they're not like real close by. You're kind of looking from far away. Maybe now you get a little bit of a better view. And then they have the Xi'an Old Wall, like an old city. But of course they have like McDonald's and it's commercialized and stuff quite a bit. So, I mean, it didn't seem so different from any other Chinese city I've been to, basically. So I've never even been back there since then. But if you're going through there, definitely not a bad spot to stop. We got a nice, hot pot and checked out some things down there that was overpriced. And then I took a train down to Kunming and I passed through Sichuan. And they had just had that earthquake, I think, only a month earlier. I think it was the same year, and because I remember being on the train. Of course, a train is, it slows down, it goes, it shakes, and I remember the guy above just jumping out and freaking out because I think he was from that area and just went through the earthquake only less than a month before, and that killed 80,000 people. And over the last 6-7 years, I've been traveling through that area, so I've seen tons of those ruins and stuff. Really sad. And then I hung out in Kunming for almost a month. Since I lived there for a year and a half, I hung out with some old friends, and that was a good time. And then I flew back to Kashgar, and I only had 3 more days until I got to Kyrgyzstan. So I took off through Kashgar. I did a big day that day, about 90 Ks or 60 miles to a town like Wuchia or something that looked pretty small on the map, but it was one of these cities that was small, but they, build up all these high rises and stuff like that. And I was just getting into town and a cop stopped me. And, he wanted to get all my info, so I'd go to the police station. He had to keep checking the passport. This is a normal thing. They don't really actually know how to handle these kind of situations because they don't usually see foreigners in random towns, but they have to do their due diligence. And so, it took a while there to eventually for him to check me out, and I got a hotel or whatever. At least I didn't get kicked out of town. Of course, at this time I didn't bring around a laptop or something because it would have been pretty heavy, so you'd have to go to internet cafes. And of course, it was the village idiot was there, and I couldn't get the guy away from me. I left, and I didn't even realize it at first. And then once I went to the cafe or somewhere to drink, I was like, "Oh, this guy's trash, and I'm never gonna get rid of him." And it was a long day too, doing real hot and stuff. And finally, I shook him off in a shop. I just walked out or whatever. The next day, I had to fix some little things on my bike, maybe my odometer and a couple little things. And one of the things you'll realize too, if you're a biker and stuff like that, if you're going to fix things and you don't want people to come around you and help, do it somewhere where there's no one around. Go into your hotel and do it, because as much as people think they're helping, they probably haven't seen that kind of bike before and these kind of parts. So there's all these people kind of in hands moving and this kind of thing, so that could be a little annoying. So just keep that in mind, because I've had that several times over the years where a lot of guys come up and I'm like, wow, do these guys is this like a bike mechanic? They just take apart all these things, they're like, and then their truck or they're leaving, they're like, oh, see you, bye. I'm like, what the hell did you just do? You just took apart half my bike. And so, usually if you're ever going to fix your bike, how to do that on your own. And that day I did a pretty decent day too, probably like 85 Ks, and luckily got a hotel room and did sleep well. A lot of people came in late drunk, which is kind of normal in China in general. They're pretty noisy when they come in, or when they're leaving in the morning, they'll get up at 6:30 and bang on all the doors and yell as loud. They have no concern for like that there's other people in the hotel or anything. And then, yeah, the next day I got to the border. Wasn't too much of a hassle. I did have to renew or extend my visa because I think I didn't enter on time. And it was like only like $20 for like Chinese and everyone, and it was like 120 for Americans, which was like the same price as the initial visa I got in Pakistan. So it was a little bit obnoxious. And so it was a cool trip. You know, if you're going to live or be in China forever, you know, it's nice to see Xinjiang. Not only the far west where Kashgar is, but up north, I haven't been to the Altai region, kind of at the border of like, I guess, Mongolia, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan. That's really pretty too. And one of the reasons why I haven't gone back is because it is a hassle going there as far as you don't know where you could get hotels and stuff like that. I took a motorcycle trip a few years ago all the way to the border of Xinjiang. I was on Gansu and Dunhuan, which is actually a really cool spot too if you're out in that area. Kind of touristy, but still cool. But yeah, once you get into that area, they'll check you. They're really sensitive about the hotel issue because obviously these days they put a lot of those people into like camps and stuff like that, re-education camps or whatever. I actually have a couple friends in Chengdu from the last few years that are from that region. And luckily, I think with their family and stuff, things are going well, but definitely concerning, you know. But if you do travel, just check ahead of the time, like if you're taking a train or whatever. Check out what towns you're allowed to go to and whatnot, because it is a little sensitive. At least it's not like Tibet where you have to have a guide. Like for Tibet, you definitely can't travel on your own. So Xinjiang, you can travel on your own, but maybe not to everywhere. You'll definitely have a hard time in some towns. So guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more content. My channel has a lot of different stuff from my travels around the world, whether hiking or biking, and some of the things over the years I've done, whether I was in the military, commercial fishing in Alaska, or my experience living in China and Taiwan for 15 years, and I was a teacher there and led tours and did all kinds of stuff. So if that stuff's beneficial for you or entertaining, subscribe, and I hope to see you next time. Cheers.